What's good, everyone? And welcome back to another reaction video. Today, we're going to continue off with the Dreamworks Theory of Everything, which is apparently the part 2 of the Mort Theory. Well, part 2 of the Well, no, actually, I think it's phase 2, to be more precise. Yeah, I think that might be the correct wording here. But you get the basic idea. Basically, second part to phase 2 of this. And yeah, now we're doing Fairy Godmother's backstory, which I, I guess it sounds interesting in all honesty. Because that is something strange to bring up. I'm not gonna lie. It's something very unique to really go about. So, let's see where this goes. I hope you all enjoyed this video before we continue on. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this reaction video. If you did, hit the like button below, hit the subscribe button to support the channel, support the content provided, and so on and so forth. Hit the notification button to be notified immediately when a new video comes out. And yeah, if there's any videos you'd like to recommend that I should react to, put it down in the comment section below, and I'll react to it as soon as possible. And the link to this video is in the description below. So with this all said, let's get right on into this, shall we?
Shrek. They are the best Dreamworks films in my opinion. They have it all. The animation, the epic story, the music, the characters, and they do have a few chunks of hidden secrets which I've made a few videos in the past digging apart. I'd recommend you watch my video on Fiona and Shrek and the Godmother before you watch this one, because a large chunk of evidence I'll be using in this video roots from that other one. So the Fairy Godmother, also known as Dama Fortuna, is a driven, intelligent, psychotic businesswoman and A-list celebrity who basically rules the social setting of Far, Far Away. Her past is shrouded in mystery, and sure as hell is not anything like the Cinderella Fairy Godmother's past, so who is she? What other plans has she enacted? How do they all tie together? I have the answers.
Okay.
Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and this is not just any ordinary fairy godmother. She's a scientist, a genius one, whose magic stems from her knowledge of chemistry and alchemy, as proven by her factory. I don't even really think she's a biological fairy, just someone who is self-mutated with chemicals. Her wand, of course, isn't the source of her magic. It's just simply a conduit of magic flow from inside of her, as we know because its lights go out when she dies. Anyways, she's first and foremost a businesswoman, but uses her celebrity status to give and get anything she wants.
I mean, yeah, it does seem like that in all honesty. I think we saw a lot of evidence revolving around her when it comes to the matter. So, yeah. Anything she does, her magic ability and all that, it all seems to match up with this. Not gonna lie. It does seem like it.
Wants to and from anyone she wants, and she doesn't care if the person she's helping is morally flawed. She'll do anything because she herself is morally flawed. As we can see on the walls in her factory, she has helped many people with their happy endings, including the Wicked Witch of the West, whom she made even more evil. Something is seriously wrong with her if she's going to weird lengths to help even the villains, but that's not all. Dreamworks tried to hide this one, but if you pause the frame right before Shrek walks into her office, you can see a before and after of Cinderella's stepsister. The fairy godmother turned the step-sibling from male to female, as we can see. However, we actually meet the step-sibling, and they seem to still be transgender. So did the fairy godmother use her magic in a way that could blackmail the step-sibling? I'm not too sure, but this frame is hidden in a fraction of a second, and Dreamworks has a love of hiding things like this in half frames. So, she's a blackmailing A-list businesswoman and professional megalomaniacal psychopath. But that's just her personality, not her backstory or motives. If you ended up watching my other Shrek video on Fiona and the Godmother, then you know that I'm 95% certain, that the witch they talk about, who cursed Fiona to become an ogre at night, was in fact the fairy godmother herself, so that she could swoop in and save the day. I believe this heavily to be the case, and so do many others. And while this whole thing with Fiona may have been her biggest plan as it involved the future of her son, what may have been her other plans, and how do they tie into all of this? Many people in Far, Far Away seem to be generally miserable. More accurately, the villains. They all hang out in the Poison Apple Tavern, and so did Harold the Frog before he got his happy ending. And it's my great belief that the fairy godmother has done something utterly wicked. She has intentionally gone around and used her magic to interfere with the lives of several people, so that she can swoop in and save their days. Not just Fiona. But the fact that she very likely did do this to Fiona leads me to believe that she's done this to everyone she's saved. It makes sense too. She's not using magic to fix them. She's just undoing the magic she already used to make them miserable. Her potions are intentionally appealing sounding, but some of them are downright evil, and are likely used for such. The other reason I believe she's making everyone miserable is because her slogan is happiness, just a teardrop away, and she has made herself summonable by someone crying. She induces this. She makes their lives suck. It's her thing. But her intelligence and strategic nature leads me to believe that she's not doing this for fame or some other petty goal. I believe fame is just a stepping stone to what she really wants, but I don't know what that is yet. In Shrek 3, Prince Charming immediately went to the Poison Apple to recruit villains once he was out of options and his mother died. Everyone in there hated him at first for some reason, but then they all warmed up to him when he promised them their happy endings back. And they hopped all over it because their happiness has been stripped from them. Charming knew the backup was to appeal to the people she ruined. Charming himself, I think, might even be a byproduct of Dama Fortuna's even greater plan, which involves herself and herself alone. Charming was a child she created, or perhaps birthed, simply to get herself on top of Far, Far Away. But she was already on top in regards to the social setting. Her plan with Charming involved getting on the top of its political and royal setting. Charming isn't real. He's a fake boy created by the godmother. This is additionally seen in how he was utterly lost without her guidance, and reverted to the failsafe of undoing the misery and the villains she created. I think more specifically that these villains were created by the godmother not only to give her something to fix, but to contrast Cinderella and the other princesses she fixed. If she creates villains, the happiness of the heroes is almost certainly assured. She did this to make the happiness of others more potent, as no hero can exist without a villain. But getting on top of the royal chain in Far, Far Away is what she wants, though I'm still trying to figure out why. She's power-starved, but I think she aims to do something with it all. Her plot started way back when she ruined the life of a small frog, making him yearn for the life of being a human. In doing so, she introduced him to Lillian, a woman whose life she most likely also ruined. As we know, Lillian's family used to be the royalty governing Far, Far Away, and this was the godmother's first step into worming her way into the system. Once their marriage was assured, she poisoned the daughter of Harold and Lillian, making her an ogre by night. Godmother created a son who she named Charming, and she had Harold indoctrinate his daughter into being entranced by the concept of a charming prince who'd save her. Funny how she literally named him Charming. It's all a part of the scheme to mesmerize Fiona, which worked, as we see, in her obsessive diary. But why wait so long to save Fiona? Why send Charming at a very specific time after Shrek just saved her? Kind of extremely coincidental, right? Why would Charming show up right after and not way before? It's statistically improbable for these events to happen so close together. So, then, there's only one logical answer to this, and it's the fact that the fairy godmother intentionally sent him right after Shrek saved Fiona, and they began their honeymoon. Clearly, Prince Charming was unaware of this plan the godmother had in mind, and she blatantly lied to him about it constantly, even in the carriage. She kind of takes over and starts screaming the same thing he screamed. This is only further proof that her son is the means to an end. But why would she wait for Shrek to save Fiona? I think I know. She needed Shrek to be there so that she could save Fiona again, to fool Harold and Lillian. She needed to swoop in and break apart their love. Shrek, or really any other rescuer for that matter, needed to save Fiona. Ever notice how the happily ever after potion is the only potion that is intentionally labeled with an incredibly appealing title and sticker behind a very important looking glass display? Notice how she smiles when the pigeon informs her that Shrek did indeed steal it? She acts like she was surprised at the theft when around Charming, but her smirk implies that she's pleased. Her plan is following through. So yes, I believe the fairy godmother sent Charming in right after Shrek began his honeymoon.
Huh. There are people that probably notice this kind of stuff frame by frame if they want to truly know what's going on within a movie. And kudos for them for that kind of determination and resolve to do that kind of stuff. But I never noticed any of this when I watched Shrek. So, yeah. Hearing this is kind of surprising. But it also makes sense in a way.
Simply to test Harold's allegiance to her and their plan. She needed to make a big introduction to Fiona, and the only way to do that would be to break her and make her require further happiness, or in other words, allow an ogre into Fiona's life and shock Harold with it. Harold's spastic dinner fight with Shrek is all because, of course, he was furious that the godmother's plan didn't follow through. He was mad because he didn't want his own happy ending revoked by her. This was all the fairy godmother toying with him, like she does to everybody. She needed this dinner table argument to happen so that Fiona would feel torn and distraught, so that the entrance the godmother made could have as much potency as possible. She was just waiting for Fiona outside. This is proof of it. She only appears if you cry into one of her business cards, not if you cry into nothingness. This means that she'd have been monitoring, waiting, which, yes, by extension, means that she wanted Shrek to save Fiona first. What a psychotic thing she is. She staged the entire film's plot. She has wormed her way into royalty, and in her attempt to be good enough for Fiona, she has become a celebrity by manipulating several other princesses. This was all for Fiona because she needed Charming to become king, because she needed to become the ruler of Far, Far Away. But why? Personally, I think she wants to lead all of the land with evil power. She wants everything. Citizens to bow before her. Similar to what Rumpelstiltskin wanted in Shrek 4, but why this? Well, most villains with determination as great as hers, with an endgame as arbitrary as this, had at one point felt inferior in their life, whether they were bullied, tormented, whatever. So I feel that's what's happened to Dama Fortuna. She made herself a fairy, gave herself magic, all to compensate for something that tormented her in her past. Quite honestly, I believe it was the previous royals, Lillian's family. I feel like something happened with them, because it seems to be the most sensible in this situation, with how she wants to dominate the kingdom that wronged her. This is besides the fact that Lillian blatantly tells Harold that she does not trust the fairy godmother. Something happened in Lillian's family history that ruined the fairy godmother's mentality, and this is her revenge. She used to be a witch, but now she's a witch posing as a fairy. This is her sick, complex, psychotic, twisted revenge, and I'm not sure what kind of things the royals did to her. Most likely, though, they shunned her because of her magical ways out of fear. I might go into this more later, but for now, I'm the theorizer. Dama Fortuna.
I don't know if I should continue or not. Admittedly, this is like a two-part thing, and yeah, you know what? Let's continue. Maybe I'll stop at the halfway point and finish the rest next time.
Tuna, aka the fairy godmother from Shrek, is wickedly villainous. I made a bunch of backed and theorized claims about her in the first part to this now two-part series, such as how she actually wanted Shrek to save Fiona for her own grand scheme reasons. I also concluded that she is responsible for all of the villains in Far, Far Away being evil, and she did it because she wants her son to marry Fiona. so that she can be on top of Far Far Away's political setting. I figured that this was all because she wanted revenge on the kingdom, perhaps because she had anger regarding the previous royals, Queen Lillian's family, and because she wants to take everything over because of her newfound inferiority complex. It's utterly imperative that you watch part 1 before this, or if you've already seen it, rewatch it immediately, because that video will flow right on into this one. And here's the surprise. I have more evidence for all of this that starts making my whole theory even more likely, and infinitely more shockingly creepy. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and as you know, in part 1 I claimed that Dama Fortuna has ruined the lives of many villains, making them evil. More proof of her possibly ruining the lives of the villains is seen in Rumpelstiltskin. It just so happened that Shrek saved Fiona immediately as Harold and Lillian were about to sign a paper that would throw away their kingdom. The fairy godmother's time with all of this is utterly impeccable, and Rumpelstiltskin's rage only grew from that point forward. She's creating villains. Another thing I talked about in part 1 is the godmother's neglection of her son, Charming. She doesn't truly care about him, and he is the means to her end, to her domination of the kingdom. I go on to explain the instances in which she doesn't tell Charming much about her plans, and this right here is more evidence of that. Charming had no idea that Shrek would show up and take Fiona, and in part 1 I made it very clear that the godmother wanted all of this to happen, and she in fact was the witch who casted the curse on Fiona to begin with. The final thing I discussed was in my major 2016 Shrek timeline video, and it was that the magic mirror, which advertised Fiona as a candidate for rescue, was a strange thing in the movie. Fiona was supposed to be on lockdown by the godmother, and she was only supposed to be rescued by Charming, so who let the mirror in on this information about Fiona? In my 2016 timeline video, I said it could have been Queen Lillian, who suspected the godmother of evil but knew nothing of the true plans, and thus let the advertisement reach Farquaad. But now, I think it was the fairy godmother who sent it. I believe it to a very high extent.
Really?
Lillian never could have slipped the mirror past the godmother's plans unless the godmother wanted it to, or she did it herself. So she wanted Shrek to save Fiona. Perhaps the godmother was even behind Farquaad wanting to exterminate fairy tale characters. Perhaps she's been granting him his wishes and forced all of the fairy tale characters into Shrek's swamp so he'd be forced to meet Fiona. After all, Dama Fortuna was supposed to be in the first movie, but it was mysteriously scrapped. So, I looked for more, and when watching the first Shrek movie over again, I realized something very specific and odd about Fiona's curse. Something in its wording. Her curse turned her into an ogre by night and kept her human during the day, until her first kiss of true love, which would turn her presumably back into a human after she kissed one. In the first fairy godmother video I made, and more primarily in my big major Shrek Theory of 2016, I made the very accurate claim that it was in fact the fairy godmother herself who cast the initial curse on Fiona. She was the witch who set it all into motion, as that was how it happened in the original Shrek book. The godmother did this to, jumpstart her master plans, but there's something interestingly unique about the wording to the spell. If she truly wanted Charming to save Fiona and turn her into a human, then why would she even allow this curse to have her stay an ogre to begin with? Why would the godmother make Fiona specifically allowed to become one or the other if she was so desperately wanting Fiona to get with Charming, and Charming alone? Why not just make the curse say, true love's kiss will revert you into a human? Well, she didn't do that because there's a secret agenda behind this, and she wanted Shrek to save Fiona. She somehow knew Shrek specifically would be the one to save Fiona. It's why she sent Charming in immediately after her rescue. I said all of this in part 1, but why make Fiona an ogre?
This is a very convoluted plan, I'm not gonna lie. Like, the idea of how this plan would work has so many what ifs and so many things that just seem so perfectly calculated that it feels kind of creepy. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it seems actually creepy as heck. Like, the literal thing here, the one thing, where it comes to the fact of how she knew these events were going to transpire, how they were going to behave if certain factors would be put in. It just it's kind of insane, really.
Why make Shrek specifically save her? And how did she know it would all play out so precisely? If Dama Fortuna really is behind even the first movie's plot and everything, why Shrek? Why ogres? I know the answer. The fairy godmother's powers root from old-fashioned and historical witches, sort of like the ones from Shrek 4 kind of representing. The fairy godmother has deep roots in prophecies and alchemy. Yes, that kind of eerie witch. She needed Fiona's savior to be Shrek because it was always Shrek. That's how she knew. She has the ability to predict the future. I know. It's like outlandish sounding, and I intentionally shied away from talking about this in part 1, but now I have evidence staring me in the frickin' face. Her name is Dama Fortuna. In the Shrek book, she was a fortune teller. Her name means Lady Luck or Dame of Fortune. That name applies to her making others' fortunes come true, but it also means fortune teller, her occupation in the book. She uses tarot cards to narrate the first quarter of the story, and she essentially stands outside of the story and prophesizes things. If that isn't undeniably stunning proof that she's prophesized all of this and then manipulatively acted upon it, I don't know what is. It makes me think that maybe her magic is quite simply an illusion perceived by everyone, and all of her power is rooted in her ability to prophesize and predict the future. Magic's just a side effect of her paganistically vast knowledge base. So, now that we've dealt with the idea that she manipulated Shrek, Farquaad, and Far Far Away, we finally once again have to return to her basis for all of this. We know she's doing this to become the leader of Far Far Away's royalty, and we know that it likely had something to do with her abilities being feared and shunned by Lillian's family, but that's not all. What exactly did she do? Well, her cottage-turned-factory might give us some clues. Possibly it could have very well been her first transitions of people. Using her magic to grant happy endings was likely seen as frightening and demonic back before she made it commonplace, and I bet she was shunned for it. Sort of like Rumpelstiltskin from the 4th movie. Shunned. So she began granting unhappy endings in defiance. Cruel fates in return, creating villains which only would have amplified things back at her, to the point of her removing the highest regals and forcing the position to be open for a new king, who she was going to make sure was Harold the Frog. Lots of famous people are famous for initially frowned upon things which are forgotten over time, leaving only a superstar. Oftentimes, a superstar with a famously bad attitude, as seen in her posters. She turned from forbidden and dangerous into scandaloclad and notorious. The notoriety of these stars is often forgotten, or perhaps in her case, erased from the minds of all, leaving only A-list celebrities. And yes, she could have easily erased her darkest past from the minds of the citizens. She has memory potions. How do I know? I know because she can make people fall in love, which logically would require the erasing of various emotions and memories of opposing events. Perhaps it was her transition of the city, or rather her transition of one of the people on her walls of fame, but it was something that got her shunned by the ex-royals. She even advertises her creation of the Wicked Witch of the West in her cottage, which I think might have even been the tipping point for the royals. Either way, it was the same thing that we see her doing in the movie that got her shunned, and that's pushing her for fame and power. And the fairy godmother was finally put an end to by the combined power of her own magic and the central man at the start of her whole plan. How poetic. Until next time, I'm the Theorizer.
I'm gonna be honest. This is the most convoluted kind of planning that there can be. Like everything about this, it's hardcore planning. There's like nothing that says otherwise that's not. Everything that, if this is all true, that means the fairy godmother was planning everything very, very, very well in detail, basically. every single detail that can be noted, anything that can be calculated. Basically, she did all of that. Like, she brought it down to the last, uh, um, basically she put everything down into the most finest of details. Like, she knows what's gonna happen. She figured out clues to some of the stuff she does. And she had to be very calculating with how to turn things around. Probably in her favor the most. Like the example with the True Love's Kiss. Because that's like really, really big brain thinking. Because it's basically, let me think. Okay. Uh, I know there was like this meme that was going on for a bit, going about how someone would calculate age between two married people and all that with just every single little detail. Yeah, something like that. Um, I think it was like a Batman beam. I don't know. If you remember what I'm talking about, or you know what I'm talking about, then awesome, great. It's basically that. This is kind of crazy. Hmm. Yep. This is very crazy. And it has a lot of things to really think about. Not gonna lie. So, yeah. Anyway, jeez. Besides all this stuff being a very convoluted plan, like everything was put into that much detail, I say the last bit is gonna probably be even more convoluted, or has something that's gonna go way over my head. Because some of the stuff that was said, it just went over my head, going like, "Oh my gosh, how can someone like figure this stuff out frame by frame?" And then that got me thinking about other movies and thinking, "Huh, that's just this movie. What about other movies?" Like, really, I really thought about that for a second. So yeah. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Again, if you did, hit the like button below, hit the subscribe button to support the channel, support the content, and so on and so forth. Notification button, be notified immediately when your video comes out. And tell me what you think about this theory in the comment section below. And I'm hoping I could get this thing around noon on Thursday. Might be a bit later, not gonna lie. It depends on how things go with Pokemon Emerald. Because that needs a lot of work. Anyway, hope you all enjoy, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye!